Hey, welcome, Brian Moran. Great to have you on Creator of Culture to chat about your perspective, which is a very interesting and fantastic perspective coming from a background in the military, special operations, civilian, as a dad, as working in various places, volunteering in various places, in the industry of agriculture and what you do on the side to help folks and to participate. So I'd love to dive right in and just ask you, man, it's been a long time, since we spoke about this particular concept, but love to start off with a little bit about you and why culture, from your perspective, is just so important, especially today.
Mike, that's awesome. Really good to talk to you. It's an absolute pleasure to do this. And it's something that I can really wrap my head around, which is pretty wild. I did retire in '09 from the military. It was a good run. I consider myself old, fat, and slow at this point. And what are my assets I can give to wherever I am or whoever I'm surrounding? And it's definitely a good run. It helps so much being able to pull in a lot of that experience, but most importantly, to be able to apply that experience in the civilian workforce after I retired. And that's where it really can be a home run. And you're one of the key mentors that helped me establish that, come across that point, which is good. So it's more than happy to be able to give back to you, Mike.
Oh no, it's the pleasure's all mine. I think I guess we talk about first off, there's two kind of concepts and two types of approaches and cultures for that matter, versus the military, life and the approach to, prioritizing, the job at hand, the mission, people, and then yourself, and then maybe how it changes in civilian life, so to speak, with, everyday activities, what you do at work, what you do volunteering, and so forth. Can you just explain each of those and just kind of the differences and the similarities?
It's a good run on that. Looking at the military side of the thing, it's a very unique environment. And I'm sure there were some people in the military that had a different type of experience. But for me, starting in special operations, doing intel work, doing medical work, a lot of the cutting edge stuff that I felt comfortable with, and also mundane stuff. I didn't isolate myself as a special operations, or I did this or I did that. It was more looking at what the mission was. And that's our own fault sometimes in the military. We look in the military, you're looking at the job at hand, and that's the most important thing. That is number one priority, whatever we can do to get it done. And secondly, we look at the people around me, or the people I want to recruit, or the people I want to be with to be able to do that job at hand. And then the last person I take care of or think about is myself. And that can be a detriment. We'll get to that a little further. A lot of times we found so many problems with marital problems where you're always putting the job first. And I'm sure there's people even on the civilian side that have these issues. Alcoholism, we've even heard of suicide, but it's this team or camaraderie that can't be replicated, really. We come close. You're familiar with the sports background. Fire departments sometimes come close. Maybe if we had a big fire and everybody had that chance to ride the wave, get that rush there, and then come out alive. But for the most part, it's that military spectrum, and especially after September 11th, it's that mission first. And if you're not worried about the mission and you're worried about yourself or getting promoted or retiring, all these little things, it can kind of fade away what the actual true thing, which is the job at hand. I found on the civilian side that a lot of people are worried about their self, which is okay. I'm kind of jealous sometimes. And they look at, how can I get this promotion? How can I get extra pay? What can I do to make myself in a better position for the future? That's important. And then they're looking at the job. And then even further down the line, they're looking at the people they're working with. And to me, it's like an opposite spectrum. It should be flipped the other way or somewhere in between. because the somewhere in between may not have that issue where you're committing yourself too much to that job. And I still don't understand the military. The people I served with were absolutely amazing, from the special ops people that I still keep in touch with to the regular people, the real army that I got the opportunity to serve with in combat support hospitals, training units. In a lot of times we get focused on just the tip of the spear when we realize there's so much more to be there. And it's kind of that concept where you're prioritizing the mission first in the military, your people that you have, how can you accomplish that mission with the people that you have? And then in the end, you're worried about yourself. Civilian side, a lot of times I perceived or noticed that people are worried about themselves, number one, and then they're worried about the job or concerned with the job. And then at the last, the people you work with. We need to move those people back up the spectrum a little bit. I would be more comfortable with people that weren't the rock stars, but I was able to spend the time to mentor and work with them to bring them up to a better level, as opposed to have somebody just spotlight and show up one day and say, I can do this job better than him. Let me move forward and I'll get promoted. I would much rather have the ones last picked in baseball or whatever it is. Sorry to throw in the sports analogy. There it goes well. It goes very well.
Well, it's just, Brian, one thing, that this is interesting, that there's kind of a converse, if you will, with the prioritization of, kind of the mission, the people, and then yourself last, and maybe a flip side. Can we jump into like the military side for a second? So as a person going into the military and then, through training, people talk about culture that you feel it. It's hard to define, it's hard to label, but when it's really good, when it's bad, and sometimes when it's kind of in the middle. Maybe it's not so pushed to a spectrum either way. Do you remember anything from your experiences that you kind of had that feeling of, wow, I just feel a part of something, I feel that I'm supported, I just know it? And is there any like stories or any experiences like that you can remember off the top of your head that kind of illustrated that?
Yeah, I'll turn it right back at you, Mike. And you'll know me as a person that does like to joke around and have a good time, but yet when the job comes at hand, I'm all there. Mike, I would give my life for you without a hesitation. And that's the type of attitude that we have in the military, that we don't do it for flag, country, honor. It's certainly not for the money, the prosperity. We do it for whatever reason. Somehow we're there with the people we're working with. In my greatest gift I can give to you is my life. And it seems crazy, and people that don't understand it probably will never get it. And they'll say, I was the one that was going to join the military, but I never did. It's hard to explain. And to have someone that's willing to give their life for you makes you do things, stepping out of your comfort zone in going forward. And it doesn't even have to be in combat, that whoever he is to your left, to your right, behind you, in front of you, is willing to step up at a moment's notice and go forward and do the thing. It's wild. And then we also respect those that have made the ultimate sacrifice, not to get dark, but we have to live our lives as if they would live their lives. I have so many soldiers that I'm living their lives for, to try to be a better husband, a better person, a better leader, a better mentor. And it's difficult. It's difficult at times. It's hard. But that's one of the aha moments that you have, where you look at it and you say, Mike, I know you. I would do whatever it takes to keep you alive and go forward. And that's the aha moment that you realize you're looking around. There's a few, I'm sure, in the military that are there for the promotion or for the uniform looks cool or whatever it is. But for the most part, that's what it is. And that's the stuff we miss when we get out, we retire. A lot of us get stuck in something I call the leather jacket syndrome, like your high school leather jacket that you have and you wear. And it's been 5 years since you graduated high school, but you're still wearing that leather jacket and acting that way. And it's kind of crazy. A lot of us moved on and had that moment, but we still live back in who we are. You can't let it identify yourself, but you got to be able to pull on it and use that to help you in your life. That's it.
So if so may I tell you, going into that environment, like I've never been a part of that, and working with you and others along the way, it opens up your eyes, just through just how you operate, you treat people, and the experiences you've had, that, that environment is ripe for people to be close. And because you have to rely on each other, lives are on the line, the country's on the line, and it's you have to do that. Conversely, with the civilian side, people aren't literally, unless it could be in a tough situation where a life was getting laid down on the line, so to speak. But mostly, like, the everyday organization might not have that experience, and people may not have that experience because it's so unique. So I wanted to ask you if some of that feeling was to be transferred to the civilian side, whether it's a group, a volunteer group, a community, how do people feel that way? Is there a way for people to kind of feel that way about their fellow person that they're standing next to? They may not be going into a conflict situation, but they may be going into a tough project together, or they're going to go in to make a presentation for a grant, or they're going to make a presentation to a city council, for extra budget for their program that they're volunteering for. They need to back each other up. Do you have any suggestions on that? Because that seems to be a really good part of culture, is that people are caring on a deep level for one another.
It is. When you look at any of those projects, we'll call them projects that you identify, from a volunteer system to a work to anything that's going forward, I use the word right there. It's going forward. If that person or those individuals, instead of constantly looking forward, could actually turn around and look behind them or to the side of them and see the type of people that they're surrounded with and try to figure out their motivation. And I'm not trying to, full disclaimer, I was a counterintelligence agent back in the day before I retired. I want to know their motivation. And that's so true, is why are you here? And it's not like calling somebody out. It's like, I'm actually taking the time to want to know what my team is. You've all heard the weakest link. You're only strong as your weakest link. Well, if I can take that weakest link and identify some issues that it has, and then move that forward and make them even stronger every day, that's going to be a team. And that team, or that link that used to be a little weaker, is going to appreciate and have that buy-in to be able to follow you to the end, no matter what. If the budget gets cut, if there's layoffs, that's the end. It's not this catastrophic thing, but we can assimilate that back into the civilian force. There's no doubt about it. Definitely no doubt about it. Yeah.
I was going to say, so understanding each other, like you were in an environment previously in your military life where you're just with a group of people that just got it. Like, you fell into the culture, and then I'm sure along the way there were, leaders that you had that are reinforcing that and reminding, and constant reminders that, you're there for each other. Talk about how in the civilian world, you mentioned about a very, very fascinating concept, and it relates to people and understanding not only why they're there, but kind of making sure that as they go through their volunteering or their organizing or their employment or working, wherever the environment is, where people are grouped together, of someone to kind of be there to make sure they're understood, they're heard, they're taken care of. And this is, Brian, this is your term. I'll say it here, but this is your term. It's the concept of the handler.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely.
It's almost an independent role that, let's go into that. I'd love to hear what your thoughts on this.
So the original handlers that I'm familiar with, and those in law enforcement along those lines, are usually an informant or a source, someone that you're trying to get things to do things for you. So it's not that we're exploiting someone. We'll just use that term as a handler. If someone's to come back and look at the team and be in charge, not so much of the team to lead it forward, but to look backward and realize what our strengths and weaknesses are and what can we do to strive when the stress level is going out, and basically to have that team and be able to move it forward in their emotional well-being, their time management, to know when we're just throwing, bad money after bad money, trying to get a deadline done, when we actually need to back up and do something fun, something simple as, sports, competitive, anything like that, just for that moment to be able to say, all right, I understand the mission's very important, but you're not going to accomplish the mission without the people. And we need to look at that people. So a workplace could have a handler. And one of the fears of mine would be that's the one to pick up your laundry, to make your appointments along those lines. We're not talking about an administrative assistant or a secretary or somebody that's there for you. We're looking at the whole team and the team concept of what the team can go forward. In the military, you didn't have to know every job. But one of the things you did know, in those people that move forward realized that they knew people. And that was one of the things, and how to get those people the best potential out of these people. Even sometimes the what we call leadership challenges, those were the more fun, because you really had to work a little harder to get the best out of them. And when they actually did, it was a super home run. It was good. I remember serving with someone that spoke 3 languages in different dialects, and just a brilliant, what I call like a military on paper, a rock star. And he was an interrogator. In his civilian job, he delivered pizzas up in Maine. And it's like one of those people you're trying to figure out what's putting them together. That's the one you're going to spend a little time with to figure out what their motivation is. And if they speak Arabic and several dialects, they are writing their own ticket to a career in the military, but yet they're delivering pizzas at home. It's almost a flag, a positive flag. You're trying to figure out what their actual motivation is. It's good. And to know that on the civilian side, where these people are coming from, what they're doing, what is their motivation, what is their priority? Are they putting themselves first, the job first, their coworkers first? And if you can try to change that hierarchy almost slightly, a little bit, and just identify it, you can get a lot of stuff done. That's my theory. I'm not 100% sure. We'd have to apply it. So if somebody's willing to test that, let's go forward.
Well, it's, put it this way, Brian. There's a lot of feedback regarding culture, this mystical concept that through this project, the creative culture, trying to pin it down a little bit so it can be understood a little more deeply. But it always comes back to, and it's been stated, it's been written about, it's been talked about, but just having a really deep understanding of the people you're around so you can understand their whys and their motivations. However, sometimes people have things going on in their own life. They have things going on with themselves, and they might not have the time to turn around and learn deeply about the next person they might be right next to. And this concept of the handler, say maybe if it's an independent person, somebody who that's their whole job, is to really know the team and know people. And they could bounce around, they could be a traveling handler. But someone who
Well, I'm going to actually turn this right around to you from what you just said, Mike. So that person that we're assuming in a type of leadership goal that may not have the time to learn that person on the side or whatever, that would be the first person I'd want to work with, to be able to somehow, can I give you the time to be able to learn your team, their ins and outs, and go forward? Yeah, the whole team is very important, but that person you identify that says, may not have that time or that structure to be able to do so, or the climate, that culture where they've never had the time to learn, maybe that would be the first one I would be able to work with. But yeah, it's an amazing concept.
Yeah, if you just think about it, if someone, say a project leader, a leader of a team, or say someone in a role of leadership just has a ton of people working with them, for them, under them. They may not have the time to do the personal touches to learn about everybody. However, what if they had a trusted handler? And if those people really, that were getting handled, so to speak, knew that they were, say, independent. They were there for their well-being. They knew
Yeah.
that it was set up like that and communicated like that. And they're just making sure people are taken care of. They're okay. How are you doing today? How was your day? Can I get you anything? Can I help you? Almost like that servant leadership thing, not to be, getting bags
Yeah,
and getting a coffee, but
absolutely.
make sure that you as a person are okay. And that do you have what you need to be successful, to be happy, to fit in? Do you feel like you're belonging? Okay. Well, no, let's as me, as someone in this role, this independent role, maybe I can change something for you. Maybe I can help be your advocate, your culture advocate in a way,
And
so it's very, very interesting.
with the backgrounds from different workforces coming in the studies on cultures of diversity of culture, to use it in that sense of the different employees, different religious backgrounds, different ethnicity, that would be absolutely, it would be a good move. It'd be a very good move to be able to identify all the things, not so much ahead of time, but as you work through it. And it's something that I try to start my day with every day. Everybody I'm working with, how you doing? Are you all right? You good? We ready for this? And then we'll go from there. Because if I can't get past that first check-in in the morning to see how you're doing, we can't go forward. We're changing it. I'm trying to change myself. I'm trying to put my people first, and I'm thinking about that mission, and we'll go from there. It's an amazing thing. We've all been in a situation too where we had bad leadership. I'm not going to lie, military had it as well. Civilian source, sometimes it has it. But it's funny when you have a tight group, or a group that might have had a handler, or a group that has those commonalities, if that's even a word, the bad leaders can make the team even stronger. Because a lot of times in the military, we looked at the mission first. And if we had a bad leader that was put in front of us, and we still had to accomplish the mission, we kind of came together as a team and really put forth that effort. On the civilian side, I've seen it opportunities where if you had a bad leader, people just willing to let it fail. In that's not the right way to do it. In maybe in that situation where you had somebody that was the handler to come forth to try to connect all the dots and kind of mediate things and keep things moving in the right direction, it would be very well. It's a interesting concept that should go forward.
Yeah. I'm almost thinking though, if they're not, if a handler is not independent in a way, the team, if they have a bad leader and the handler is working for this bad leader, they may not have the trust in the handler. They just say, "Oh, it's someone else working for this person." But
so once again, we'll go back to that point where the handler is going to look at that leader first and say, "What do we need? What do we need?" It's buy-in. It has to be buy-in, or somebody's got to go first, or most importantly, somebody's got to go second. And that'd be the one. That'd definitely be the one. It's different. It's definitely different.
Right. We talked about this. It does relate a little bit, but it's the concept of the smartest person in the room.
So
let's talk about that.
I've left a few jobs because of that. And it's basically where you got to turn around. And if you're not looking at the people, you got to look at yourself. And if you consider yourself the smartest person in the room, and obviously there was some brilliant tech companies that had the smartest guy in the room, but that person would be nothing without their team. If you feel like you're the smartest guy in the room, it's time to leave. It's one of those things. You're going to have anger, hate, and discontent at times. And you're like, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? And honestly, you might not be a good fit for that company or organization. I'm not saying the organization is going right or solid, but sometimes it's ready to move, and you're going to find that culture that you're looking for, or somewhere closer to that culture. Or more importantly, you're going to be in that culture, look around and say, yeah, I want to make this the place I want to work. I want to work with these people. I want to go forward. Make yourself a better leader. Make yourself a better person. It's almost like a do-over. And if you come to that point where you feel like you're the smartest guy in the room, it's time to move rooms. Let's go forward. Let's find a new place.
Hey, Brian, is that because, when you feel like that, from your perspective, is that because the place has done innovating? Has it gone stale? Have they just the fire in the belly is gone? So that culture maybe is about, hey, look, we're fine. What just is how it is, and not looking to, I guess, improve or progress or innovate in a certain way.
Every job or team or whatever happens, it loses people constantly. It's through attrition, for whatever reason, retirement, family issues, moving, who knows? There's a myriad of things that it can happen to. And you always got to realize that, once again, that job or that mission is going to go forward with or without you. So sometimes it's even, if you're going to leave to move on for something else because you feel you're at the position, you never know who's on deck that might come forward to take that team that almost made it to the top, to be able to take it that last little bit. And it's my own personality, Mike. I summed it up the best as, I'm a good bad news taker. You give me some bad news, I got it. I've spent 20 years in the military. I got 20 years in the fire service. I'm a good bad news taker. I can smile with the best of them, no matter what's going on. I try to make that positive outlet. Granted, it drives some people crazy, but I'm always looking for the good side. So even if it's time to move and move on, you feel good as you left that someone else is going to take it that last little bit. It's a little seance or a little way to kind of make it work better. So
what would you give to a piece of advice to someone to suggest that outlook? What would you say to that person if they're not, kind of thinking that way?
You want to look around, and like I said before, turn around and look back at you. But I think the best thing I can do is protect your assets. And sometimes we get lost on this phrase and they break it apart, or a person may break it apart. Protect your assets. What's your assets that you have? We're not talking your financial assets, your family assets. You're talking about your workplace, your climate, what you've built, what you feel comfortable, your experience that you're bringing to the table. It's not protect your ass. I think we have a lot of problem when people are like so paranoid that they're going to get in trouble or they're going to make the wrong decision. There's nothing worse than the failure to make a decision. You're almost better off making the wrong decision than not making a decision at all. And I would say that it's protect your assets. And if you feel uncomfortable about that and disagree with probably the whole conversation we had, then you're probably going to protect your ass. So there it is. That would be the ultimate summary right there.
That's right. Totally. So it's worth fighting for. So you get into a good place and there's a good tight-knit bond of people. You built it. Say that the mission is either very explicit or you just know it. That's worth fighting for. It's worth protecting your assets, for sure. And the outlook that you have that you mentioned about being really good at taking, bad news and having that perspective that you mentioned is key to the climate, to the culture, maybe one that, people want to aspire to create. So I think without further ado, just one final question for you. We've already gone to our time, which is unbelievable. Is if you're going to sum up, culture in, a phrase to leave with people, what would you say?
Oh, that's a tough one. We've talked about this all week. We've talked about it the month prior in looking at the culture. I would say we're going to go back to that summary that I said of that ultimate peak of that culture, that I would do anything for you. There it is. That's that moment that I had in the military. Let's look at the culture of the environment and say, I would become a better leader. I would step forward. I would do above and beyond. In the fire service, I find myself, stepping back or stepping down because that culture is not there to have somebody go forward and move in different directions. But when you find that one person that you're like, all right, I'm going to align myself with this other person and we're going to create our own culture and it's going to be contagious. That's the home run. And that's where you find it. And you find it in the weirdest places, but you won't find it until you turn around and look left and right and say, all right, what do I got here? And be able to move forward, Mike. Does that help?
It does. Sometimes it's leading up and building that culture from within, and then it gets contagious, goes viral, and then there's really a big buy-in, and you kind of create a culture, self-manage in a way, and then it spills over time. Brian, thank you so much. It's been
No
such a
worries. Thank you,
pleasure.
Mike.
Always great insight. So thank you again, Brian.
Oh, best of luck and move forward. Let's take some of these ideas and roll them out. All right, Mike.